To the US now and focus on the US immigration policy amendments that has seen at least 1,000 immigrants arrested since an immigration crackdown began in July. US President Donald Trump introduced new immigration laws that included the arrest and deportation of undocumented immigrants, even if they've lived in the United States for decades and have no criminal record. This has led to hundreds of lawsuits by immigrants challenging the policy. We're joined by Professor Christopher Isike now, who is Director for the African Center of the Study of the United States at the University of Pretoria. Professor Isike, thank you for making time for us. How are you this morning?
I'm very good, and thank you for having me.
Our pleasure. As the US's Trump administration follows through with a policy to tackle what started as a big city crime, which it links now to immigration, the National Guard troops have been deployed outside Chicago as the latest there and could continue on to Memphis. Firstly, let's talk about what this policy is and what it entails.
Well, look, since President Trump came back, we call it 2.0, second term in office, his government has implemented a package of administrative measures that include executive orders, the restatement of interdiction programs, expanded fast track removals, and then put a lot of money, into detention and enforcement. And all of this constitutes, a marked intensification of immigration enforcement, like you said earlier on. And these changes aim to, according to them, deter irregular migration, and then also accelerate the removals or deportations, as we have seen. But many of these changes, compared to what was in place, especially during the Biden administration or even the Obama one, and even during the first Trump term, these changes raise concerns, serious concerns about legality, due process, humanitarian, protection, and then the capacity of the system to actually arrest and keep people, right? So all of them speak to the raise questions around the effectiveness of this, and that's why you see they are being challenged in courts by these migrants that are affected.
As you say, they are being challenged. Some local leaders have called this policy aggressive and they don't support it. Is this immigration crackdown by Trump's administration authoritarian, as you see it? And how much transparency has actually been given to it when it comes to troop assignments?
Well, yeah, it's not been very transparent. It's been very ad hoc and arbitrary, and it has caused a lot of tension now in the country. And this is also raising issues around democracy in America. Just yesterday, I was listening to the news. A musician was being chased down by a Department of Homeland Security because his new song referenced some of these deportations and how people in their homes, little children, are afraid of a knock at the door, afraid of being harassed by ICE, their parents being taken and deported. We've seen parents deported, after 20 years. The famous one is the Venezuelan journalist that was deported after 20 years in the United States, and his children had to go visit him in Venezuela. So the impact of all of this is that people cannot speak about it without some kind of fear of being, pursued by the state. And of course, like you said, people are challenging a lot of these things. They are not very transparent. And it's around the framing. It's very political. Trump came to power using immigration as a major weapon. And his first executive orders was to close the border and to enforce deportations without that did not meet legal scrutiny both in the United States and internationally. So these are tough times not only for these immigrants themselves, but also for democracy or for respect for laws and international law in America and the world.
What could come out of the lawsuit that follows opposition to this policy from Democrat leaders? A court hearing with a federal judge is scheduled. What legal questions could arise on this policy?
Well, there are lots, and let me start by saying that it's not just Democrats that are opposing it. Even Republicans themselves, a few Republicans are already voicing concern that yes, they support immigration and immigration crackdown. They support tough action against illegal immigration, but they think that the Trump administration has gone too far. So we're seeing a lot of that. But in terms of the legal concerns, which you can also link to human rights concerns, is due process limitations and the judicial bypass, right? The expanded use of expedited removals and administrative fast track mechanisms that this government has put in place reduces access to immigration court review and legal counsel. So many of these people do not have that legal recourse because of how fast these things are moving. And once legal judicial review is curtailed, the risk of erroneous removals is very high. And we saw this in a lot of those who were earlier deported to El Salvador. And some of them the courts had to rule for them to be brought back, but the government stubbornly insisted on not returning some of them. And when they did, they arrested them and framed them up, you know. So there's also an erosion of asylum protections. These measures push asylum seekers to now wait outside the United States. Or accelerate removal procedures, which place procedural barriers on the part of people with legitimate protection needs. And maybe another good example to talk about here would be the TPS, the temporary protected status, which is the U.S. immigration policy under which nationals of different countries or certain countries affected by armed conflict, it could be environmental disasters or other extraordinary conditions can stay in the U.S. legally but be protected from deportation and receive work authorization. Now, when Trump administration came in January, by February of 2025, the Department of Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem vacated the TPS that was put in place by the Biden administration that was supposed to end in February of 2026, and then reduced it by 12 months to end in August, right? And this was challenged, and they've now put measures in place to ensure that they respect the court's decision to ensure that it stays till February 2026, because according to the judge that blocked the early termination of the TPS, he said that these Haiti people had made plans, life plans till February. So cutting that short without notice is procedurally unfair and also unjust. So these are some of the challenges that can be put forward and the kind of recourse that people can have. The question is always whether the government will have the political will to actually respect court judgments.
So, on that TPS, then, the argument that is in criticism of this program, which was signed into effect back in 1990 by President George Bush, that extending protections for certain countries repeatedly makes a mockery of this program. Does it stick, as you see it? That the argument that TPS was only meant to provide only short-term protection during humanitarian crises, when we look at the realities of global migration?
Well, you're correct that it's supposed to be a temporary protected status, but then it doesn't mean that those people are exempted from pathways towards a permanent stay or citizenship and integration, right? Like everyone else who applies for other reasons to the United States, even after the termination of their temporary protected status, they should be eligible to apply, and then they can be processed like everyone else. Unfortunately, the immigration system in America has been broken. There's been politicization of it as well by both the Democrats and Republicans. And maybe it has actually made it very lax for people to simply just move from one status to another without any kind of enforcement or any kind of check. So there's a sense in which the administration is right to look at these things, and they have the right to do so, but this must be done within the prescripts of national and international law.
From those who risk deportation from the US, 1 million people from over 8 countries or from around 8 countries, which nationalities faced the biggest threats to their survival?
Well, they are mostly people from Latin America, Colombia, Salvador, Venezuela. These are people that, they trooped into the US. They are the neighbors of the United States. So they are mostly affected because their entry into the countries usually through border states like Texas, from Mexico, and then we also have a lot of people from Puerto Rico that are supposed to be like a state. It's under administration by the United States, right? So have easy passage to the United States, but have restrictions that also they are supposed to adhere to. So all of these new measures will affect those Latin American countries. There are also countries in Africa that are beginning to face some of these deportations. We've seen the Trump administration use third country deportations agreements to send citizens of not just Africa, however, but even hardened criminals from Latin America that were sent to Eswatini, for instance. But many of them in the past, especially the ones that were sent to Ghana recently, Rwanda, Uganda are mostly Africans, that are affected by this new immigration crackdown.
What impact can the 6 lawsuits filed by civil rights groups, let's talk about civil rights groups now, across the US have on preserving the TPS for people from these 8 countries, as well as 9 other countries whose protections are set to expire in future?
Well, I think essentially what they're looking in terms of the impact, the idea is to force governments, to ensure that they follow the rule of law, that there's transparency, evidence-based country condition assessments, is done, that they maintain the basis for protections until the original expiration. If there is need for, so if you do a country by country assessment, according to the DHS secretary, that the conditions in Haiti when she was advocating for the termination of the TPS in the case of Haiti, her argument was that conditions have improved significantly in Haiti to merit a return of these immigrants. However, that is not necessarily the case because less than a year ago that Haiti had complete breakdown of law and order, and there was no government in place for some time. And let's also not forget the role that the United States has played historically in getting these countries, many of these countries, to where they are currently. The United States has a history of supporting regime change in some of these countries, and of course outside of the imperial outpost it has. So it cannot suddenly absolve itself from responsibility for citizens of these countries that it has been complicit in damaging one way or another, and then prevent them from coming to the United States to get some kind of recourse. So those are some of the measures that they are seeking to get from the courts, and then perhaps one of the impact will be congressional oversight, to enable Congress to clarify the TPS statute, to strengthen boundaries on execution discretion, and define national interest and country condition criteria. And all of these require consistent notice period to ensure this due process. So this kind of challenge is useful, but again, for me, the real it's okay to challenge, come together and file a lawsuit and support it. Oftentimes they would win. The question is whether the government has the political will to actually govern the state in a transparent, in a legal manner, when everything is framed or politicized around fragmentation of the country into devilish, demonized Democrats versus righteous and conservative,
Right.
real American Republicans.
Of course, from civil rights opposition to law enforcement to lawsuit opposition, as well as the ordinary citizens, I guess Chicago's citizens who've increased protests over these immigration enforcements in their city. So a lot of movement happening there, and that remains to be seen what more can be done. But thank you, Professor. Thanks for your insights.
Thank you for having me.
Professor Christopher Isike, Director of the African Center for the Study of the United States at the University of Pretoria.
Bringing you the energy, news, and good vibes to kickstart your day. This is Rise and Shine on Channel Africa. Africa, meet Abedi.
Yeah, that's me.
Abedi is a music lover through and through.
I love African music.
He's got a taste for all kinds of tunes and spends his days listening to Channel Africa. Guess what? He didn't know.
Okay.
Channel Africa wants to help Abedi and all music lovers everywhere to discover